Hey, this is Matt. Once again, welcome back to another video. This is another paid request, this time for Jonathan. Thank you so much for that. And for those interested requesting any type of videos or topics, reactions, commentaries, reviews, re-reviews, what have you, feel free to send it either directly to my PayPal or join my Patreon. Both links are down below in the info box. And this is kind of a tongue twister, Dahmer, Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story. Or I forget if it's Dahmer Monster or Monster Dahmer. I don't know why it's not just called the Jeffrey Dahmer story, but okay. Now, there's been a lot of stuff done on Jeffrey Dahmer, a lot of movies. I know there was one back in the day that starred one of the guys who starred in the film Blood Diner. I never saw that one, but I remember seeing the trailer to it. Then there was one that starred Jeremy Renner. Then there was one that I did see called My Friend Dahmer. So like I said, there's been a lot of stories told about this. You kind of wonder, like, what's the point of telling it again? And anytime you tell these stories about real life killers like this, there's always that question in the back of your head: what are the moral implications of doing this? Because the victims' families will be reliving this again. They'll be asked questions again. It'll be right back into the limelight. Are we glorifying these killers by telling their story over and over and over again? Because the best part would be for them to not be remembered. But in a weird way, they are being remembered for their atrocities. They are being remembered for their horrible things that they've done. I mean, and there are movies I have liked that have Henry Portrait, a serial killer, for example. But again, there's that thing in the back of your head, you go, is it really right to keep telling this story? Let alone to keep telling it over and over again. Aren't we kind of doing what the killer wants? Because a lot of these people, they want to be remembered, they want to be legends, they want to be glorified. You know, you don't always remember me. It reminds me of that scene at the end of Seven, where Kevin Spacey's character's like, "I'm going to be remembered forever," and Brad Pitt's like, "No, you don't. You're TV movie of the week." Which, you know, that was the case after that. So there's always this weird vibe when you watch this kind of stuff. When again, there are plenty of documentaries on this subject. There are other movies on this subject. So it's not like it's never been done at all. So this was on Netflix, and he had me. Thank you once again for the request, paid request, Jonathan. I really appreciate it. To watch and review episode 1. Episode 1 takes place in Milwaukee, 1991, where we have Nisa Nash, who I remember as Renisha Williams in Reno 911, because I'm a big fan of that show. She's a neighbor. She complains of the smell. Dahmer says that, oh, it's just it was meat before, and now he had a fish, and it died, and it went bad. And she's hearing the sound, and as we see in Dahmer's place, he's cleaning up a bloody saw. And do I really need to explain who Jeffrey Dahmer is? Well, I'll do it anyway. This is a guy that would go to gay bars, as he does in this episode, pick up people. He picked up a person, offered him $50 for a photo, and then he would cut up people, eat people. A lot of the people he killed happened to be black. And cannibalistic guy. I always think of Jeffrey Dahmer. The thing that comes to mind is Demolition Man, when Wesley Snipes is at the end. Jeffrey Dahmer, I love that guy. We gotta unfreeze him. Which of course doesn't make sense in retrospect, because Dahmer did get killed in prison. I forget what year it was. It was way after Demolition Man, though. It was, I forgot what year. but he got his ass killed in prison. Now, the episode itself, I mean, it goes rather slow. I mean, it's about an hour long, and it's pretty much just after that bit with the neighbor, like I say, goes to a bar, talks with some people. Ultimately, they say no, but he picks up one guy, go back to his place. There's like 85 warning signs, and I don't mind the guy who plays the almost victim, Tracy Edwards. Sean J. Brown. I thought he did a really good job. I also didn't mind the guy who played Dahmer. I think he's the guy who was Quicksilver and those X-Men movies, Days of Future Past. I believe it's that same guy. And I thought, like, all the acting so far. Richard Jenkins, who's in The Shape of Water, The Cabin in the Woods. He played the father, Dahmer's father, who pops up at the end of this episode. I think Molly Ringwald, I read up, plays the stepmother. So, interested in Molly Ringwald. They see her get some work. She's not much in this episode, but I read up, apparently she is in the show. This is about 10 episodes. I guess the whole idea is that this is going to be in the view of the victims and not Dahmer. And that's why it's trying to make itself differentiate between other material Dahmer made. But the whole hour is just pretty much just build up of me thinking to this guy, to Tracy Edwards, there's a lot of warning signs. I mean, you might as well have a neon sign that on you that says victim. Because, and to be fair, he does say some things where it's too hot, well, I'll turn the AC on. Open up a window, no, I can't do that. And Dahmer's acting so erratically, he's like, I want to leave. But it's hard for me to get mad of it if this is how it played out in real life, but I'm looking at Sean J. Brown's character. He's really in shape, he's got the muscles, he's in shape. And then Dahmer, doesn't seem like the toughest person. I'm thinking, why did this guy just beat the shit out of Dahmer? This guy, I mean, looks like he went to the gym, trained with The Rock. He's got 6-pack abs. I'm like, why is he just beating the shit out of Dahmer? Like, So I don't know if the real Tracy Edwards was like that, or I guess I understand being scared, but he seemed like a big tough guy, and Dahmer did it. But I don't know what. That's the thing with all these based on a true story. How much of it is true and how much of it is embellished? That's always the issue with this stuff. Now, I thought it was a decent looking show with the cinematography. A lot of times those Netflix shows definitely have some budget behind it to make it look fairly good for their, again, cinematography wise. The acting I didn't mind. You do have a little bit of intense build up where if you know a bit of the case, you know where it's going, but like they're sitting together and they're watching a movie, and on the TV is The Exorcist 3. And it is actual footage from Exorcist 3, so they weren't bullshitting. It's not like they say Exorcist 3 and then you see the TV's like, what the hell is that? No, they're watching Exorcist 3. Which, for I understand, when Tracy Edwards was a witness at the trial, he did say they watched the Exorcist movie. I don't know if it was the first one or the third one. Just from what I hear is different stories. Some say it was the first, some say it was the third. But anyway, they got that in there. Or let's lay down, and then Dahmer puts his head on his chest and says, I'm listening to your heartbeat because we're going to eat it. Which then I'd be like, eat this, and just crack his fucking neck, but I mean, as soon as this guy who just looks like, I'm sorry, Dahmer just looks like serial killer. And I'm sitting there going, okay, he's saying lines like death, just part of life. It's time to get the fuck out of Dodge. But I don't know, just the way it made Tracy Edwards look, it made him look kind of very, very naive. But I don't know if that was the reality of the situation. But I mean, it's really just mostly about that build up, so there's not really a whole lot happening. So that's why, because I know of the Dahmer case, because I know of the material in the past, there's really nothing that unsettling or scary to me, other than I thought the performances were rather good. I did think it was rather slow. Now, on the flip side, as the chickens and roosters outside are having a field day, apparently maybe Dahmer's out there. He got reincarnated as a fucking chicken, and he's trying to eat some of the others. Cannibalistic chickens. That's a film for trauma. Surprised they haven't done some cannibalistic, holocaustic chicken. Another thing that's bothersome is when you look at stuff like this, you always wonder, okay, well, what did they embellish? What did they make up? And I get it that the cops, there were cops during this time that were, as well as all times, there are cops that are shitty. I know that's a lame thing to say. Well, not all cops are bad, and people get pissed when you say that, and they're like, well, no shit. It's like, yeah, I know there are cops that are horrible, terrible people, but I'm just saying, to really push the narrative that all cops are bad, which some do, maybe you don't, maybe your other person doesn't, but other people do, it's just not true. And even at this time, there were terrible cops, and I think they do an episode on this where, sadly, during the case, there was a 19-year-old that did escape. Not this guy, but there's another guy. And the cops seemed that he was drunk. And Dahmer had said, oh, you know, we were lovers and had a spout. And the cops returned the guy to Dahmer. But then I read up that apparently in the show, they made it seem as if those two cops got so highly decorated after that. But if you look at reality, they didn't. And that's what I mean, is that it seems like a show that's trying to twist the racial cop narrative of the cops are racist, all Milwaukee cops at that time were racist. That's how Dahmer was able to get away with this for so long. Yeah, there was probably some, like those two cops that did that shit because they were too fucking stupid. I wouldn't. Who knows? Maybe it wasn't they were racist, just they're too fucking stupid. There are a lot of people that are too fucking stupid to hold a job. But they really try to ratchet up, and I'm like, okay, is this like trying to be, I don't want to say woke, but is this, like the very first scene is the neighbor, Niecy Nash, watching TV, and on the TV it says, 5 white cops beat up a black guy who was an undercover cop. And you look up info, that didn't happen. Not in Milwaukee 1991. There's no record of that happening. Maybe some of that happened somewhere in another state and another time. And pisses me off because it makes me and white people look bad when you have assholes like that. But at the same time, you're forcing this narrative that wasn't there, at least in this part of it. Like, you want to talk about the real life thing that happened with those 2 piece of shit cops? Okay, talk about that. But like, why are you? Is it trying to push into the same with the neighbor Nash, Renisha Williams? Her talking to the Dahmer, and then at the end when he gets arrested, she comes up and goes, "I called you guys, and you ignored me." Here's the thing, that character, the person that character's based on, didn't live in the same building as Dahmer. She lived in a different building. That's a pretty big difference. Living in a different building to being the neighbors almost this way across. She comes out and then he's right there. His room is right there. That's a huge fucking difference. And that's what I mean by I didn't. Because again, I knew a little bit about the case, and I'm sitting there going, there wasn't a next door neighbor like this. There was a neighbor in another building. And that's what I mean. When you watch this stuff, I'm like, okay, if that's not true, and if this other thing isn't true, what else isn't true? And that's the problem a lot of times where they do this kind of stuff. If A isn't true and B isn't true, is C true or not true? And then you have those doubts, and so that at the same time, what is this meant to accomplish? You can't say it's entertaining. You can't say it's informative when some of these facts are stretched and embellished. So then you say, well, what is the point of this? If it's to learn info, you just watch a documentary. Which I'm not opposed to requests on documentaries. They might be hard to watch, but I'm not opposed to that. So that's what I mean. It's acting, good. Look at the show, good. Other than that, like I said, it's a slow build-up. Most of it's in this one room where the guy, he sees Tracy Edwards, played by Sean J. Brown. I want to keep mentioning that I really liked his performance. He's like, what is that? Oh, it's just dish soap. And the guy realizes he might be getting drugged, so he doesn't drink it. Although right then and there, he's like, he should immediately leave, kick down the door, and bust down the door or try. But and ultimately, the guy escapes, gets to the cops. The cops come by. They find evidence. They arrest Dahmer. It ends with Richard Jenkins, Dahmer's dad, being called in, told what happened. And I like Richard Jenkins' reaction, his breakdown. He's a really good actor. And it goes back to Niecy Nash, where the cops go, you have to leave the building. This is a crime scene over here. There were chemicals used. And then she asks a weird question. The guys mentioned you have to leave, there's chemicals and all this stuff. And then her question is, how many did you find? I'm like, you're being evacuated, and that's your first question? How many did you find? Now, I don't remember the details, so this stuff might be true when the cops are telling Richard Jenkins what they found in his son's apartment. Head in the fridge, hearts in the freezer, and other parts, a bleached skeleton, vats where it was filled with acid and there was torsos and stuff in there. He was trying to melt it and get rid of the evidence. Some good makeup effects, and I mean that definitely has a creepy edge to it, of course, just because of the narrative. And apparently this was successful. I mean, I don't have Netflix, so I watched this via other means. Because I don't have Netflix, I don't have Disney Plus, I don't have any of that shit. I watch it from other means. I'll just put it that way. But apparently when this came out, this was like hugely successful. One of the more successful shows of its ilk. At least on Netflix, I should say. But apparently, I looked up, it had a lot of controversy. Of course, victims being mad. Apparently, there's some people who made the show that, they had bad experiences making this. I don't know, just seems like a bit of a clusterfuck, to be honest. So, and like I said, even if I don't like an episode, whether it be like the Chucky TV show or this or other stuff, if you still want me to review other episodes as a paid request, feel free. I think some people, they see that I didn't like an episode, they go, oh, okay, I won't bother him. I'm like, no, if it's a paid request, it's not a bother. So you keep doing it till the cows come home. I'm just going to sit here and be honest. So I can't really say I was big on this. I was a fan because of the embellishments, because of the trying to force even more so. Like there's a kernel of truth there, but really trying to overdo it with the racism stuff. I thought, like, don't make shit up. Let the truth speak for itself. You don't have to embellish, make other shit up. Like the 5 cops and black guy under. I'm like, that. For what people say, there's no record of that ever happening at that time period in that city. And then I already talked about it. But with that said, thanks for watching. Take care. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.